Welcome, everyone. This is the Countrywide Coordinator Call, January 15th, 2026. I am your moderator tonight, Kim Cooper. Our co-host is Janice Toomey. So Anna's got a little delay, and we've just been sort of chit-chatting, and I thought if there was something you wanted to touch on real quickly in a lesson sort of way, we would love that.
Okay. I guess what would you like to know about? You want to talk about jurisdictions? You want to talk about what do you want to talk about?
Let's talk about General Assemblies.
Okay. All right.
So what do you think is the easiest way to get an assembly body to understand that need?
Okay. Well, your General Assembly becomes the teeth and the law of your state assembly. Okay. You have you have not a whole lot of teeth. Yes, you can call a court of equity, but your court of equity really doesn't mean anything in the de facto. They just kind of laugh it off. And there's actually been, one of our justices in the past who was elected on site, who, through, just a raise of hands and was promptly put in jail for 4 months for impersonating an officer of the law. Okay. So this points to the fact that we really do need to have publicly elected court people and court officers in order to make sure that we can go forward and conduct our courts in a meaningful way to the de facto, right? That's where our state authority is in that. It's in us. And in everything that we do when we officially stand up and do this, okay? So, contrary to some of the rumors that are out there, Ohio has had their courts up and operating since August of 2024. We've had 2 very successful cases that were entered as foreign judgments and went and we were successful. Okay. And I've talked about at least one of those cases before priorly, but we had a publicly elected justice, a publicly elected court clerk. We've got a publicly elected bondsman, and we are actually operating our court. Now, your General Assembly is sort of the organizing part of your court system. So the General Assembly is split into two elements, okay? Your General Assembly is the organizational side. That's where your jury pool committee, your court venue committee, your education committee, right on down to a law patent and or a land patent, and at county levels there's a sheriff's committee, but all of those are on the organization side of the pillar. They make the plans. They set the process up that you're going to use. And I always remind people that when I'm teaching General Assembly, that due process starts with the word process. There has to be a process that is identified, and it's got to be consistently applied, right? That's part of how you get your law established, okay? And that you make sure that everyone that comes in your court is treated equally among everyone, okay, or among their cases, that they're treated equally, and each separate case is its own separate case. We don't necessarily dwell on precedent, okay? So there has to be that process in there to start with. And I see that Anna's here, so hi,
Just
Anna.
gonna say that. Okay. Yep. Thank you, Lisa. Always the best. I appreciate you. Mm-hmm. Welcome, Anna. Where are you?
She's welcome.
There you are.
Welcome. I'm sorry. Welcome. I just muted her. I am so sorry. I'm sorry, Anna.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
I'm so sorry. Oh, goodness.
Okay, so thank you. Thank you all for being here. And thank you, dear Lisa, for pinch hitting for me.
You're
I'm
the
coming
best.
in.
Yeah.
I'm coming in from meetings and teleconferences and phone calls, that's not unusual. What's unusual is that we've just been informed that Mr. Trump seized our gold, which came from the birth certificate bonds that was returned by the Vatican. And that's not cool because Mr. Trump is working for foreign corporations and he's under contract to us to act in good faith and good service, right? And we do not need a foreign entity seizing our gold and telling us what to do and how we're going to spend it and how it's going to be distributed and who it's going to be distributed to, for the very simple reason that each and every one of us that has a birth certificate or whose parents had birth certificates issued are owed that money individually.
When will we arrest the criminals doing this?
Well, first of all, they have to be informed that they are acting inappropriately and in a questionable manner. I fall short of saying criminal matter. It's not quite a criminal matter yet, but or manner, but it's inappropriate. And so we're going to have to go back after Mr. Trump and say, look, this is not your role. You don't have a contract.
We did that when I thought we did that when they went to England, when we originally went to claim this.
We did. And it's not the fault of the internationals. It's the fault of the people that are working here who have kind of gone rogue and not understood what was going on in the bigger picture, haven't had a complete picture of the history. And they're continuing to try to act as our trustees and herd everything under the QFS system and control every purchase you make and surveil everything that you do under the false pretense that you're a British subject.
Certainly, we've notified them individually by states, and now Federation has got to have had more than a few conversations in writing. How are they still so unaware?
Well, they're aware in some part, but as for this example, we're going to have to actually inform them that, hey, those 432,000 gold bars belong to the American people as an inheritance, and you have no contract or say so about how we distribute it or what we do with it. It's ours. Return it.
Do we give a deadline for action?
Well, I think that just simply saying that and demanding it as soon as possible, within a week, 7 days or whatever, to be returned.
You should give them a real deadline. I mean, honestly, they've proven to be completely unscrupulous. They should have a perform date. And if they don't perform, they should be under the threat of federal arrest.
Well, yeah.
This becomes a little bit crazy that these are our employees acting like we just need to keep telling them. They know very well they're in violation.
They were in the process of delivering it to us when they pulled back and said, oh, hey, wait a minute. And so now we have to go back to them and say, this is a private inheritance. It has nothing to do with you. You don't have a contract to even touch that gold. And you are responsible for returning it to our custody right now. I mean, there really shouldn't be any question, and there really doesn't need to be any future date. It's due now.
Yeah, due and payable on demand, and we demand it now.
They were in the process of delivering it.
Mm-hmm.
They actually knew that they were supposed to deliver it and didn't.
And how is this going to affect the GFG overall? Because I know it's just one element.
It won't hold up GFG at all. But think of this as an inheritance.
This is the tax of 6 generations.
Well,
or no, this is the birth certificate gold since birth certificates, rather.
Right. This is the birth certificate gold that was it offered as settlement of the birth certificate fraud. on the assets, the actual physical asset side of it. So anyway, we're in the middle of a push me, pull you on that one. As you can all see, the Trump administration is very erratic. I want you all to know that we monitor over 160 different news feeds and channels and sources. And so that keeps some of us pretty busy, not me particularly, but certainly those who are on Rat Watch. No, it has nothing to do with gold stolen from Building 7. That was the Brady Bonds gold. And so that was a different, separate clump of money. Anyway, the birth certificate gold is an inheritance. And so it's to Americans, it's a soil jurisdiction resource. And in our government, it has to come through the international portal provided by the Federation. And so there's absolutely no doubt that that gold needs to be in our custody, not theirs, and that we have the right and responsibility to return it to the actual owners. So
we have a question in the chat. Where would our gold be stored at?
Well, there are numerous places around the United States where our gold is stored, and they're usually very large caverns, basically. But
Like
caves, man-made mining caverns that are now empty because the mining operation has moved on, things like that. That we've got several large bullion repositories. In addition to a lot of banks have got bullion depositories where they keep hard assets as a part of their asset portfolio for being able to lend money. Now, I don't know how many of you are aware of this or not, but using their various excuses and impersonations and phony persons and you know, all the other extra stuff that they've embroidered onto the basic fraud, there is 26 times more that's been loaned out as credit than is actually in those banks.
That's not good.
Right. And so when you think about your house and the mortgage that the state of whatever owes on that house, multiply by 26.
Wow. Any other good news?
Well, it's actually very crazy out there right now. Those of us who have a brain have always known that there's a difference between something that's jotted down on paper and something that's in your hand as an actual physical asset. And unfortunately, this is something that the rest of the world has yet to learn. I don't know. Don't look at me. That was always apparent to me, even as a small child. So I have no idea how anybody could fall for this for as many decades as people have been falling for it. But basically, what they did is that they took basic commodities like orange juice and sow bellies and silver and land assets and anything that was physical, and they securitized it, which means they took it in as chattel, and then they issued credit based on this new chattel. And every time they issued credit, they were doing the same thing as they do with their other fractional reserve opportunities that they fraudulently foisted off on the public, where they, if you've got $10,000 worth of sow bellies, you automatically issue $100,000 worth of credit based on that 10,000 pounds of sow bellies. So they basically were doing fractional reserve banking and using all commodities, not just gold, not just silver, not just land, not just houses, but all commodities they were using as assets, securitized assets that was backing their release of credit in the fractional reserve banking scheme. And they were consistently extending 10 times the value of the asset as credit that could be loaned out to people. All right, so, and then on top of that, they compounded their sins by, in addition to doing that, we found out that at least in the examples of silver and gold, they basically did the mortgage-backed securities boondoggle using silver and gold. And so what they were doing is they were selling people silver, which they called unallocated silver. And so basically they have a big, stockpile of silver. And they take silver from all their depositors. They take silver from all sorts of different sources, and they just pile it in one big asset pile. And then they sell shares, not actual silver, but shares in this pile of silver. So it's unallocated. You have a share in this big silver stash, but your specific bar of silver or your specific ounces are unallocated. And then you have to pay a whole bunch of extra money in order to have an allocated share and actually have specific ounces of silver held in your name. Okay, so they take a real bite out of you for allocating it and having it ready to give to you, right? But most people who bought silver were not told this up front. It was hidden in the fine print of the contract, and any difference between allocated and unallocated was not made clear to them. And so it's a crisis of the sort that we had with the mortgage-backed securities, where they took a whole bunch of mortgages and bundled them all together and then sold a share interest in all those mortgages to people as a investment. Well, what happened?
Timeshare.
Sort of.
Timeshare, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens when the individual investor wants to liquidate their interest in mortgage-backed securities? They don't have an interest in any specific house, right? So they're actually holding nothing that's rational or physical or meaningful, or I guess the other part of it is enforceable. Because if you don't have a defined insurable interest in something, you don't have anything. You're just holding paper. You're holding a share interest in an asset that is a conglomerate of assets that are undefined, unallocated. Okay? So it's the same thing that they're doing with the silver, and that's why people who think that they own silver go to their broker and they say, okay, I want to take out 100 ounces of silver, and the broker says, well, what you want to take that out in physical silver? You really want to hold it in your hands? And you say, yes, I want delivery of 100 ounces of silver. That's what I paid for. That's my understanding of what I invested in. And the guy behind the desk says, oh, yes, right away, Mr. So-and-so, I'll forward your request to the correct department. Okay, well, yes, I want to take out my 100 ounces of silver. I have a pressing need for it. Well, you really want to take out an actual 100 ounces of silver? Yes, I really want to take out my investment of 100 ounces of silver. Well, before we can do that, we have to change its designation from unallocated to allocated. We have to actually identify specific ounces of silver that are yours. Oh, well, I thought that had already been done. I thought that was the deal from the first. Oh, no. If you look at page 44, section 2B, you'll see that, that this is a contract for unallocated silver. And in order to have an allocated interest in silver, we have to change that designation. We have to identify specific bars or ounces of silver as yours. and enter it into our inventory system. And then we have to issue a certificate and give you this 100 ounces of silver physically. Okay, well, how long does that take and what do I have to do? Oh, it's only going to take 8 to 12 weeks. And there'll be a 5% service fee for this. Then we'll notify you as soon as it's ready. And then you'll have to have a registered agency that has a depository certificate pick it up and deliver it to another bullion depository that's licensed. And about this time, your head is going to explode, right? You're going to go, what the, and it's all designated and set up this way to discourage you from actually ever getting physical silver. They're trying to force you to sell your interest in the silver back for Federal Reserve notes, right? Because the Federal Reserve notes just cost the cost of the printing or the cost of the check or whatever, the processing fee. And then they get to keep the actual silver that they have on the books, but which they don't actually possess physically. And this keeps the scam running a little bit longer. All right, so now you've got the problem of having to get a company like Brinks or Loomis to go pick up your 100 ounces of silver from the brokerage where you bought it, the investment firm where you bought it. And so they go and they pick up the 100 ounces, and you have to have it all pre-prepared that they're going to deliver it to a licensed bullion bank. Okay, and there are damn few of those, by the way. There are none in Alaska. Even though we're a major gold and silver and platinum producer, there are no licensed registered bullion banks in Alaska. How do you like that? Anyway, there's really only a few of them in the whole country. There's like, I can think of 4.
Does this go hand in glove at all with the Supreme Court ruling?
Which one?
The one about how banks have to have on deposit the amount to cover, or the amount on deposit to cover the depositors?
Right now they have a 0, and that's set by the Federal Reserve. They have a 0 reserve ratio. They don't have to have anything on deposit. And the FDIC is already broke. So, just so you all know.
I guess I'm misunderstanding. I thought last week there was a Supreme Court ruling about this. But literally don't hang on my words, because this is very gray, not silver or gold to me. I'm still trying to get my understandings. I thought there was this announcement that the banks had to be able to cover their depositors.
Well, that's always been the law. They've always been required to like when they sell
I can't
silver.
go in and empty my accounts. Like if I tried that actually a year ago, to go in and get a bunch of money, and what I consider a bunch of money, and they were like, no, you have a limit. You can only take out, we only allow 5,000 a day.
Yeah, they've been doing stuff like that for quite a long time. But now they're doing things, they're getting prepared to completely abdicate any accountability for depositors. And they're getting ready to abdicate any accountability for the bank either. They used to have to keep a minimum, I think it was something like 29% of money that was loaned out. They had to keep a certain percentage, and that percentage got chopped down smaller and smaller and smaller until at the most recent reading I saw of it, it was 0. They didn't have to keep any actual asset base in the possession of the bank in order to justify their operations. And FDIC, as of yesterday, was broke and the bank run is on. Okay, and 5 major banks failed overnight. They're European banks who got stuck with holding the bag for all the short positions on silver. Our sneaky banks probably conspired, included those that had large silver holdings, and flipped and went long instead of short on the market. and passed on their short positions to all these European banks, which are suddenly standing there going, where's the silver? It's supposed to be here. And
Well, there
so-
are a lot of people with their hands up, and there are several questions in the chat. Basically, in the chat, people want to understand, since they've gotten deposits in the last few days, does this mean things are going to be releasing?
it does, and it's a kind of an interesting stair-step process. It's sort of like pulling on the end of a ball of yarn, you know. But yeah, it's a signal that they're getting ready to do it.
Do you say a step process? Do you mean like first in, first open?
No, I mean, first you have the you have the distribution of the different kinds of credits, and then you have the vendors, and then you have the opening.
Mhm. Got it. Okay. Do you have any information? And I don't like to ask this directly because I know that you're not necessarily their mouthpiece, but you're where we get it. So do you have any dates?
I long ago decided I am never going to say another word about any kind of date because there have been so many things that have gotten in the way. And it seems like every time you do, it's like jinxing it.
Yeah.
You know, the moment that you say something, then something else huge is going to blow up.
Yeah.
You know, and suddenly someone's going to say, but what about this? And what about that regulatory authority? Oh, and does this apply? And just about the moment that you're ready to push the button, so I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to say, you got the distributions all caught up.
Got it. Okay. Do you want to tell us anything more, or shall we start with questions?
I think that there are a lot of bizarre things happening right now. A lot of gold and silver is coming out of the woodwork. It's not that we don't have it. It's that it's been misappropriated, misallocated, and put in different bins, and different kinds of excuses have been made for this. And now all of a sudden we're finding it. In the case of the silver that was owed to us from the 1933-34 hijacking that took place under the Roosevelt administration, where they exchanged their IOUs for our silver, we finally found out that it had passed on to JP Morgan, and that was flushed out of the darkness, and we were able to have public affirmation of that when JP Morgan was forced to come forward and cover its silver short position. So we now know that over 400 million ounces of American silver got passed on to JP Morgan as part of the bankruptcy of the Federal Reserve System, and that the trade name of the Federal Reserve got passed on to JP Morgan and Chase Bank. So Chase can function as the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, and JP Morgan can function as the Federal Reserve by virtue of acquiring the trade names. Okay, so you've got a giant ball of wax with a whole bunch of impersonation, a whole bunch of trademarks being purchased and awarded through bankruptcy proceedings that are hidden from the public. All sorts of bizarre things have happened in the past, and now we're sitting here trying to sort through what's true and who's who. It's worse than trying to figure out who's father and who's mother in the British royal family. It's absolutely crazy.
It's very funny. Okay, final question out of the chat, and then we're going to go on to real people. Not real people. I didn't mean it like that. I apologize.
You're not a real person, Kim. Come on
now. When will the heritage dollars be distributed?
That comes next. The heritage dollars. Yeah. Remember, there are two systems that you're dealing with here. You're
Yeah.
dealing with actual asset-backed money that is an asset in and of itself, like gold, silver, platinum, copper. Those are actual physical metals, and they result in coinage, and they result in certificates of deposit for coinage, okay? So that's one system. And then you have the so-called financial system, which is bonds, stocks, debentures, insurance policies, promissory notes, all of that stuff, the commercial paper, is on the other side. So when you're talking about credit and debit, you're talking about the financial system, and you're talking about things that we commonly think of as fiat currencies or credits, as in credit cards. But the missing piece to that whole system was the prepaid credit that was owed to the living people. And because the living people were paying for everything in actual goods and services, it was not being credited in that system as prepaid credit. Now, they always had the ability to post prepaid credit. It was not an unknown concept, but they didn't do it. It would be like paying off somebody's promissory note, right? Because we're actually paying for all of their government expenses when we do this. It would be like paying off somebody's IOU, and then they didn't credit you for paying it. And they didn't have another little ticky here saying, oh, Kim Cooper paid this IOU for me. They just kind of neglected the fact that their IOU was being paid, and not only paid at the time that it was first issued, but paid repeatedly over and over and over. Every time that paper IOU was presented for payment, actual people responded by exchanging actual goods and services. So not only do we have prepaid credit, our prepaid credit is not based on some airy-fairy thing like paper silver. Our prepaid credit is based on actual goods and services rendered. So our prepaid credit is, in fact, asset-backed. Okay, and that's the linchpin. That's the missing link between the actual world and the pretend world. That's what was missing. That's what they omitted.
Full value.
Right. And so now they not only owe us all that prepaid credit, they owe us on the interest on all that prepaid credit, which includes, by the way, all the usury, all of the prepayment of the debt on the quote unquote national debt should never have existed, because the national debt itself didn't exist. The moment that Federal Reserve note came off the printing presses and got in someone's pocket by whatever means, got in the bank's pocket, got in, the moment that went into commercial transactions, that debt was paid, right? It's a zero sum. Boom. Here's the IOU that's presented. Here's the goods and services paid. Bang, there's nothing left there, right? So there's absolutely no excuse for them postulating the existence of a national debt for anybody, anywhere, anytime, where you're using a fiat zero-sum transaction system, which is what this has been all along. Anyway, so they trumped up the idea, the appearance of a national debt, simply because they didn't credit what they were receiving as payment.
Yeah.
So they trumped up the existence of this national debt that does not exist, because everything was paid from the moment that it left the mint, right? Not only that, they then continued and said, oh, we need to be paid usury on this national debt. So if you've been watching the financial news ever since Reagan, you realize that all of the tax money they were collecting wasn't even going to pay the principal of the national debt. It was going to pay interest on the national debt. That interest was all bogus too. Not only was there never any national debt, there shouldn't have been any interest on any national debt. All they did was omit to notice the payment that they were receiving every damn time they presented their promissory note, and they were neglecting to issue an equal amount of prepaid credit. That's what was happening. So now we are going to issue prepaid credit. Now, one of the things you probably heard today was that they're taking the $100 bills out of circulation. There's a reason why they're taking the $100 bills out of circulation, and it's because they've been counterfeited all over the world. Obama took the printing presses and the engraving plates and the special papers and inks and distributed them all over the freaking world. He had printing presses set up in China. He had printing presses set up in Thailand. He had printing presses set up in Indonesia. And they were just, running off $100 bills as fast as they could print them in these gigantic printing facilities overseas. And they were spreading these Federal Reserve notes around to all these other countries. And they were using it for political payola. They were using it as to pay debts, to say that they were paying debts they owed these other countries, all sorts of other things. It was just a gigantic counterfeiting operation that Obama put in place. And so now they're trying to take the $100 bills out of circulation because, especially with all of these people coming in through the southern border, they've been importing all this counterfeit money. And so we've got a real counterfeiting problem with the $100 bills, and that's why they're taking them out of circulation. They're not telling you this, but that's what happened. And Mr. Obama and his administration were criminal, just plain criminal. And so it was the Biden administration that followed. And I don't care whether the Democrats like it or not. These are the facts. This is what these people actually did. They committed treason, embezzlement, impersonation. They committed every crime in the book.
Arrests. We look forward to their arrests.
Okay, so anyway, dear hearts, that's what's going on with the $100 bill. And this is how we're countering the whole situation by issuing the prepaid credit that we're owed.
Okay. Can we start with some questions?
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to run on, but I thought that was important
You
enough.
talk as much as you want because we want to hear everything you have to say, but I also don't want to run out of time. And so let us all be succinct, shall we? Denise, you are first.
Hi, Anna. Thanks for all the great articles and the communications over the last week. We do have some that'll be posted on Stand Up Public House for County Nation handbooks, as well as possibly more information coming out about petitioning for funds. So I just wanted to let you know, and I am working on Emily with that. If I can get all that to you, do you want to take a look at it, Anna, before I publish it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
No harm in checking over, making sure everybody's got the I's dotted and T's crossed.
That's what we want. Okay, sounds good. And then we also had a question that I know Gerda won't be able to ask from British. Thought it was on my mind as well. We had people moving from one assembly in a state to another assembly. So is there still I guess, a moratorium on running for any kind of role for a year when you move? And then also, do you have to check in with a new assembly, or what's the process now? Because I don't know if there's been like an update.
Well, what there's been, especially in the former Commonwealth countries, is a realization that the way that this worked in the Commonwealth was different than it worked in the states, because the Commonwealths were never independent sovereign nations until late in the game. And when they had all of their states, or as they were called, provinces, not states, they had a different system. And they didn't have that provision about waiting a year and a day. Now, the reason that the states in America had that provision is that we found if we didn't have that provision, people would go jumping over the border and participating in the other states' elections in a way calculated to benefit the neighboring state.
Yes.
Okay, so there was interference. And that's why we had that provision that you had to live for a year and a day in the new state in order to become a full voting member of the assembly in that state. And that's something that you can adopt, you know, all of your provinces can adopt. The more crushing thing, there are a couple of crushing things, and it applies to both Australia and Canada. And that's why to basically merge all of the provinces and operate as a single state, you know, one single giant nation state. Now you've got a situation there in Canada where you've got, what is it now, 5 different provinces that want to join the United States. Is that correct? If they join as states, then they would fall under the same provisions that we have. So if say Alberta becomes a territorial state, because that's all Donald Trump can do is make it a territorial state, right? But if Alberta comes and becomes a territorial state, and then the people say, okay, well, we're ready, enroll us, well, then you'll be enrolled as the state of Alberta, right? I'm just choosing an example. But you would become the state of Alberta under Trump, and that would be the territorial government. And then you would be enrolled as a state of the Union under the Federation, and that would then cover your land jurisdiction. So then all of the things that we're talking about with our state assemblies would apply to you. You see, because you'd be an actual state of the Union. So it's a little bit crazy situation with Canada right now. And actually, Mr. Trump might slow down his initiative once he realizes that the moment you become a state of Alberta in the territorial system, you've already met all of the requirements under the Northwest Ordinance, and we will simply move to enroll you as a state of the Union, at which point you'll gain control of your land jurisdiction, and you'll be an actual sovereign power for the first time in Canada's history.
Does that answer your question, Denise?
Yes, thank you, Anna. Have a good night.
Okay.
Good night.
Dorothea, you're next.
Hi to all you beautiful souls. I hope you're well.
We are.
It's nice to see you, Anna. I have some questions that, is it okay? First of
Yes,
all, about the public notary and the notary public. You have explained it very well on previous chats, but here is a question that I need to ask. If a notary public actually notarizes someone's paperwork with GFG and it gets submitted into the system, it's supposed to get accepted, correct? Because a notary public counts as 2 living witnesses. Am I right here?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a situation where somebody that we helped didn't have witnesses, and a notary public actually did their assembly seal on it, and it got rejected. That's the first thing. Then I have another question regarding the situation we discussed last week about the threats and all the nonsense happening here in Africa, causing a lot of harm, hurt, confusion among our people here. So this threat thing actually got put it on a public notice on the Telegram groups, like the INAC Earth group, which Tony is their his group. So for me, if this person is allowed to run around like this, saying he's a coordinator, also a marshal at arms. How does the coordinators that's doing hurt and harm in this way, threatening people, who is
Dorothea,
above them to sort this out?
Dorothea, I never got an email from you, at least not one that came through recognized, so I don't know the details yet.
Okay, can I resend it to you because I did send it to you?
Yes, and give me the subject line that you're going to use right now. You know, you can just say something like situation in Africa. Okay?
Thank you. Because I did
And
send it to you.
yes,
Like I said, now this is being posted on a public platform again. And for me, even in that information, in that report, so-called notice report, saying that if people actually making demands, saying that these people's accounts should be shut down, they should not be allowed to work with GFG, making demands toward you, wanting to control you to make choices regarding this. I'm just bringing this up so that you are aware of it. For me, this is not, if this coordinator is allowed to run around like this, who is in control of them to bring them into line if they are acting out like this, if there's no
well,
one above them, if they are a coordinator?
I don't know which Tony you're talking about. There are several
I'm
people
talking
named.
about Tony Carroll.
Okay,
It was posted on INAC Earth. He didn't
okay.
post it, but it was not removed by the person that posted it. So it was posted there and he didn't remove it. So now it's a massive thing with the African people asking, where is the discipline in this? If a coordinator, he say he is a coordinator in the sense of on Africa's soil for assembly, if he's allowed to run around like this, threatening our people, and I'm not
I
talking about
don't
Tony
believe
being a
he's not a
coordinator.
coordinator for us. He may be a coordinator for the World Marshal Authority or somebody else, but I don't believe
No,
that Tony is. If he's a
no,
coordinator, he'd have to be a coordinator for Ireland because
no,
he's
I'm not
Irish.
talking about Tony. I'm not talking about Tony being the coordinator that posted it. I'm talking
Oh,
about the coordinator here on Africa saying he's a coordinator and he is allowed to go around posting these stuff about the people on Africa's soil, putting accusations out there, putting harmful things out there, threats out there, and it did not get removed from the INAC Earth group, where I know Tony is the owner of that group. But this was posted on that group. Again, it's hurtful, harmful, causing confusion. But this coordinator of Africa, they even changed their name now, saying they're not the the Southern Africa States Assembly anymore. Now they're standing up as Africa United States Assembly. So this coordinator is running around making lots of nonsense for our people here, lots
well,
of confusion and lots of hurt.
okay, I get it. As far as I know, we have not appointed anyone to act as any kind of coordinator in Africa as a broad spectrum multi-nation coordinator. There is no such thing that I know of in Africa. Okay. And if I don't know about it, it probably doesn't exist, right? So why don't you give me the names and the contact information of the people that you have and explain the situation as succinctly as you can, and I will get to it. And just use situation in Africa as the subject line.
I will definitely resend it. I did send it, but I will resend it. I will do that. Put that as subject line. Thank you, Anna. I appreciate this.
Thank you. Uh-oh, now we got him.
Kim,
I
you're
might.
muted. Kim,
My
you're
bad.
muted.
I apologize. I apologize. I apologize. Before Mike, I have in the list somebody named Tritia. Is there a Tritia? T-R-I-T-I-A?
Hi, that's Trisha. I took my hand down a while ago, so thanks. I yield.
Okay, well, okay,
Hi,
thank you so much, Trisha. Sorry about that. Then I have David Hera.
Oh,
This order on the screen is not the order on a written list.
Yeah, I took my hand down. Continue.
Okay, thank you, David Hara. John Russell or Russell.
Good evening, Anna.
Hi, John.
Okay, last week I asked about some help for our record secretaries, getting it set up with Terry Somm, and
Yeah.
we still haven't heard anything. So I just want to refresh again tonight. For South Carolina, I
Yeah,
sent
I
out
have
the
not
email.
heard from Terry myself in several days.
Okay, well, I got
I
people
did
waiting.
send her that notice, not notice, but note about this. I also copied you, so I did make a stab at it. I'll
All
have to
right,
follow
thank
up
you.
with her.
And I wanted to thank Lisa Schaefer for all the training she did for the 5 people of South Carolina. She did a great job. Now we just need to get them working.
That's right.
So I thank you all and have a great night.
Thank you, John.
Bye, you.
Thank you, John.
You're
Linda Henley.
She took her hand down.
All right, thank you. Mike McGowan, you're up.
Thank you. Actually, I was on the list too last week, but I have bad connection, so I got kicked off. And I sent my email, but I didn't get a response. Can I send another email so we go quicker tonight? And I'll put who is John Galt on it.
Okay,
Thank
I'll
you.
note that.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you so much. Rocky Roper.
How you doing there, Anna?
I'm Rocky.
Hi. Hey, this question is more about because you made comments that we have our post office open, the Federation one or whatever. And
Yes, our Federation Corp post office is never closed. It came close to closing, but it never did.
Mhm. So our question is that one of the ways that we can, like the de facto or the other people, whatever, can tell who we are is by our passport, right? And can this post office do our passports, or is there some other thing on that basically would be our passports? You know what I'm saying?
Yes, we can do our own passports. We just haven't had we haven't had the time and money and personnel and everything to set up that kind of a structure yet. But yes, the answer is yes, we can certainly do our own passports.
Yeah, we were just thinking that if we had our own, it would be just the same as doing our paperwork, because that would be, an ASN type passport, right?
Well, technically, your ASN credentials can serve as a passport. All you need to add to that are 2 signed witness statements affirming that, yes, this guy with the picture here, this is Rocky Roper, and he's a good guy, and he's traveling for legitimate purposes, for private business or to vacation or whatever.
Okay.
That's really all that you're lacking.
It's like me right now. I have to renew mine, and I was just wondering, if we could do them other ways. But yeah, I'm just going to renew it the normal way, like with the moonshine thing. But
well, see, the hard part is that all of this stuff that they present to you, like the TSA scans and all that stuff, it's all actually voluntary. You can say no. You can say, I'm not going through the scanner, so you just better get ready to pat me down. And, it takes longer, but you assert and keep your rights, and you don't become endangered with all these invasive technologies.
Yeah.
And it's the same way with passports. Now, other countries may refuse to let you in, which is part of the problem that we face. But as all these other countries get revealed as just nothing but franchise corporations of the US Inc. and the USA Inc., they are losing the battle too. They're being forced to honor the land jurisdiction people. So we had experienced problems with people being able to, say, travel from here to Norway. They'd be able to leave here, they'd be able to leave the United States, and they'd be able to get back into the United States, but they wouldn't be able to, say, go visit Sweden, because the Swedish government said, no, you have to have this kind of passport and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Well, we're still seeing some of that, but less and less and less as more of the bureaucrats get cued in and realize that, hey, we actually do have to accept this.
Right.
The
Okay.
postal union is acting to make sure that other countries are honoring our paperwork. You may have also seen that the postal union is using the federal postal court and actually had an executive order to round up the bar attorneys and judges that have been operating this criminal court system.
Definitely need that. The last thing is that last week I talked to you about our like logos and letterheads and seals for our court documents.
Right.
Have you got anything on the seals that, because I looked at your seals on your documents and stuff, and it looked like just a little image that you say that belongs to you, I guess. Do we have to do something? You know how we do the recording secretary, how we have, you know, the signature line for them and all that? Should we do the
You
same?
don't have to.
Okay.
You don't have to. The important thing with seals is that the seal has to touch whatever it's sealing.
Right.
So if it's a signature, the seal has to touch the signature.
Yeah, I noticed that on your documents. It was, you know, like next to your last name on the signature line. I have some letterheads and stuff that we already come up with. Can I send those to you so that you could look them over to make sure they're okay?
Yeah, put stationary as the subject line so I can pick it out of all the flood.
Yeah, I understand. Okay. I'm going to yell and let other people go, but thank you very much. And you've been really great. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Rocky. Okay. Loretta Pat, do you still have? Yes, you do.
Hi, Anna. How are you doing? Can you guys hear
I'm
me?
still standing.
Yay, that's good. All right, I have a question for you. Registered mail stickers with the RF number no longer are allowed to be handed over the counter. I was told, as well as a couple of other Missourians on Missouri, that they must account for every RF number now. So is this because of our post office coming back into operation? I know you just told Rocky that it has always been in operation, but I didn't know if maybe this had something to do with the November 17th.
Not that I know of. What it has to do with is that more and more people have been using registered mail to send precious metals.
Oh, okay.
And they haven't been properly declaring the precious metals and declaring the insurance value and paying for the insurance. And so the post office has been getting stuck with claims of loss claims on uninsured registered mail. And a certain amount of insurance is, applicable to the delivery anyway, but not enough to cover, say, you sent a dozen gold coins and you didn't declare it as a dozen gold coins and you didn't pay the extra insurance for the real cost of replacing those coins. And so they're having to be more careful, much more careful about what gets sent through the registered mail.
Okay. Well, is it okay then for ASNs to have their baby deeds witnessed and then go to the post office and fill in the RF number at the post office? And they just have obviously the 2 copies they always would have had, but that way we can get one of them put on, taken for the LRO, and then the other one would be sent to the state, the Secretary of State.
Well, actually, what we're finding is that it's just as effective and less expensive and less hassle to use express mail.
Okay, so what would we use for the baby deed recording number? Because typically we were using that RF number.
Well, you can use the same sort of situation. You've got a specific number that is attached to all of the express mail mailings.
Okay, all right. And those are considered to also be unique numbers that wouldn't be used for anything.
Right, they're very, very unique, and you can use that as the transference number showing that it was moving from the jurisdiction of the sea to the jurisdiction of the land.
Okay. Now, you had also mentioned that we could go ahead and claim our adult children. Do we do baby deeds with that as well? Is that how it's done?
Right. You would consider that they were a baby born in 1976, say, you know, and that is what you're doing. I mean, obviously they are now adults, but you are raising your hand and saying, oh, and by the way, that's my child, and I claim them. They're Americans. And that way your adult children have a claim already in place for them, so that when they get ready to come back, as many of them will, to reclaim their American birthright, it'll already be on record that they are officially accepted as the son or daughter of the person who is their actual parent and who claimed to be their parent. One of the shticks that's been used against us is the idea that the parents haven't claimed the children, therefore the children are wards of the state. And it really doesn't matter how old the child is when the parent steps forward and says, no, that's not right. I did claim them. I do claim them. They are my children. And that then puts an end to that pretense. That's exactly what my mother did for me. When she realized the way that they had misrepresented everything and that she had signed me up as a British subject, she just about lost her ever-loving cool. She went on for like 6 pages telling them, not that United States of America, this United States of America. She was just really teed up and ready to go. And I think a lot of mothers in America would be equally, just outraged. But the simple way to do it is just to go back in and say, this Annette Marie Garcia, who was born on February 2nd of 1983, is my daughter, and she was born in the great state known as Nevada. And, just make it absolutely clear that you're a state national and your daughter was born a state national. And that is very good backup for them to have, and it protects them. It actually protects them. So go ahead and claim them at any age. And
we go ahead and send that also into the Secretary of State as well.
Yeah, you can. It's actually the U.S. Secretary of State is responsible for keeping track, and the State of State secretaries should be. They may or may not. Some of them do, some of them don't. But the important one is the U.S. Secretary of State, because he's specifically made responsible under the Naval Dispositions Act that the Parliament passed back in 1864 and ever since. So he's the officer recognized as the one responsible. And the importance of claiming your children can't be overstressed. And there are a lot of ways to do it. One is with the baby record, what we call the baby deed, but it's a baby record that records who his parents are and what their political status was and when the child was born and all that good stuff. Another way of doing it that's very effective is to put a public birth announcement in the paper. And this is something that our parents always used to do. My parents did, and for a long time, local newspapers did it just as a common courtesy to the community. They stopped doing that. And now you have to do it in the personal section and just have a birth announcement, a daughter, Lisa Ann, born to Joe and Camilla Stavowski, and of 1444 Birch Pine Lane, and whatever. Just do a little birth announcement. Proud grandparents are so and so and so from Missoula, Montana, and so and so and so from Long Island, New York, and just have that little short birth announcement and keep that page as part of your child's records. Take photographs of it so that you have not only the tear sheet, the actual sheet of the newspaper where it appeared, but you also have a digital record that's a photograph, a JPEG, so that you can keep that on record and produce it no matter what, right? The only danger of keeping your own records is that, of course, fire, flood, tornadoes, earthquakes, it's if you have it in multiple places in multiple formats, and that's always advisable. And if you can spread it around to 2 or 3 people, best friends, relatives, grandparents, aunties and uncles, do that so that you're all kind of interconnected. And if something happens and God forbid your house goes flowing down the river, as we're seeing more and more and more of that, then someone in the family will still have that record for your child.
Okay, well, thank you. I yield. You have a great
You're
night,
welcome.
Anna.
Good question, Loretta.
Yeah, really good. I learned a lot on that one. Gregory S.
You hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, Gregory Soderlin. I have questions about common law lawyer. Like 3 questions. What are the controls that are or are not in place to authenticate a common law lawyer, or is that not necessary? So authenticate means that you're legitimate in a sense, if that's the right word. Legitimate, it's probably not, but
There isn't an accreditation service for common law lawyers. There probably should be, but there isn't. It's certainly something that is a good idea. We have, of course, the bar associations who keep track of the bar attorneys, but because they are practicing a foreign law and their performance ratings in that foreign law don't really give us any useful information about what they're doing. It's only a nominal business of saying, oh yeah, well, they're licensed and haven't been drummed out of the core yet. But we should have some sort of a registry, or in our case, a recording service that keeps track of common law lawyers and whether they do well by their customers or not. We don't know how many charlatans there are out there, but there are certainly bound to be some. And let's also acknowledge the fact that, like many other things, the meaning of common law has been distorted and confused on purpose, because there are many different kinds of common law. You can even describe martial law as common law because it has a body of decisions in the past that it draws upon in making decisions now. So it has an aspect and character of common law, but it's not what we would normally, just off the cuff, when we're talking about common law, we don't think about martial common law, right? And so quick answer is no, we don't have that kind of a Better Business Bureau set up for common law attorneys, but it's a good idea, and it's probably something that we should arrange in time to come.
so essentially it's like a self-regulation thing where you feel you have a sense of competency, and then you would back off maybe and try and find a colleague that you felt had more competency than you. That, I guess that's the best way for a person individually to handle that, so that they were respecting and had a duty to who was coming to them to help to do the best that they can for them.
Well, bear in mind that in our common law courts, the defendant stands for themselves and the injured party, the plaintiff, stands for themselves. So in our common law courts, unless you are so sick and disabled that you cannot actually speak for yourself, or you've been a victim of murder and are dead and can't speak for yourself, you should be at the court saying yes or no or maybe to all the questions that might be asked by the juries. And so our common law provides that you present yourself. You don't have a representative, except in those cases where you cannot present yourself. That is kind of a flag that you're not in a common law setting or a common law situation under American common law if you are required to have an attorney or lawyer present.
Right. So the common law lawyer would be more of an advisor, that somebody you could go to who would guide you, maybe? Is that,
Right. We call them lawyers, And they are counselors of law, and they stand down at your shoulder and they say, they can't get away with that procedurally, or that secondhand testimony, it should be thrown out because it's secondhand testimony, you know. So yeah, you can have people who are kind of your coaches standing beside you and communicating with you about the play-by-play in the court, sure. And that is our tradition, is that we have, when we have a lawyer, we have someone who's expert in such things as court evidence requirements and court procedures, and who has a knowledge of prior cases that have already been tried concerning this same subject. And they sort of stand there as your little Jiminy Cricket on your shoulder and saying, yeah, well, then there's, Smith versus Sampson in the Fifth Circuit Court in 1993. And, they're rattling off this stuff for you as examples of prior cases. Now, bear in mind that none of these courts that you get sucked into have to pay any attention to those prior cases. It's entirely discretionary for admiralty and merchant courts. And so they often don't even pay any attention to the prior cases because they're not operating in common law. And they just say, oh, well, I'm going to take that under advisement, or, yes, well, that's all very interesting, but, and so because they don't operate in common law and have no common law, in fact, under their jurisdiction. See, all these court cases are being tried under maritime law, admiralty law, or administrative law. That's it. They have no common law, and because the federal corporations have no common law, of course, then the state franchise corporations under them have no common law. So whether or not they take any notice of common law is entirely up to the judge's discretion, and he just says yes or no. So they don't really practice common law. We're the ones that practice common law, and common law is what we're owed, but common law is what we have to give ourselves, which is why all of the state assemblies are under the gun to get organized and get their courts up and standing so that our people have the correct law and they have access to the correct law, and our courts can deal with our people.
My understanding was that it was prior to 1938 that they wouldn't recognize cases because that's when public law became public policy. So it's cases before 1938. And my understanding also is that they did take pleadings, common law pleadings in the courts up until about 1956 or 1958.
They still take common law pleadings, don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean they pay any attention to them, though. You see, what happened with Erie Railroad versus Tompkins is that the federal government came right out and said, we don't have any common law. And they don't, by definition. Maritime law is not common law, admiralty law is not common law, and administrative law is not common law. They never had any common law, ever. Those particular federal subcontractors do not operate under common law. They have never operated under common law. And so, although 1938 and Erie Railroad versus Tompkins is always cited as this big deal, the only real big deal is that the federal government finally got tired of being sued at common law when they don't do common law and said so. They brought up the obvious. Hey, we don't have a common law. That's all that happened with Erie Railroad versus Tompkins, is that they came up and put it right in the face of the people that were trying to use common law in their courts. So no, there's never been any common law, and any common law that's brought forward in these courts, it's purely up to the discretion of the individual judge whether he will consider the common law tradition or not, because his court doesn't function under common law. And that's something I need to really drill into people. I know so many patriots who have, 50 different case law examples of a principle of law that is constantly ignored by all the lower courts. And you may be perfectly right, and you may be perfectly within your own jurisdiction. You would be vindicated, right? But you're not in your own jurisdiction. You're in their jurisdiction. You're not under your own law. You're not under common law. You're being prosecuted under maritime admiralty or administrative law. Okay, so all this effort going into finding, different court cases, at least in the lower courts, is useless. Doesn't mean you shouldn't bring it up. You should. But what happens, and we've seen all sorts of examples of it just this year, where it gets all the way up to the Supreme Court, and it's like the Supreme Court got a hypodermic in the butt, and they go, well, yeah, we need to affirm this common law court back in the 19th century and pay attention to things like the fact that, the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. Who knew? But all these lower courts who don't function in common law don't have the authority to interpret common law or the Constitution, so they just keep bumping it up, bumping it up, bumping it up. And then it's up to, the will of fate and the politics of the day whether the Supreme Court will even hear you. We've had a whole ration of court cases coming out of the Supreme Court that have, for example, upheld the Norton versus Shelby County findings that basically said the Congress has no ability to further delegate their power of legislation. So that all these agency and administrative courts have no power. They have no authority outside the corporation. But they had to come through and say that half a dozen times. They went back and they confirmed things from the 1800s. And we've had the Second Amendment ruling. You don't really have to have a carry permit. Your right to buy and own a gun can't be infringed. Why, who knew? Right? And there's been another big one just this week that I'm going to report on in an article probably tomorrow, where people are their Fourth Amendment rights are being recognized for the first time in 100 years. So what's happening? These court cases are finally filtering up to the level of the Supreme Court, which is the only court that had the ability to comment on them, right? And the responsibility to comment on them. And the Supreme Court is under enough pressure now so that they're actually ruling in a manner that is agreeable to the Constitution. But if you remember, back in 1991, the self-serving Congress changed the judge's oath so that they didn't have to rule in a manner agreeable to the Constitution. It became discretionary on the part of the judges, whether they ruled in a manner agreeable to the Constitution or not. All right? This is the kind of bullshit that we've been getting out of these supposed public servants in Congress. And what that then did was politicize the judiciary and make the judiciary a creature of the Congress. Because if a judge chose to uphold the Constitution in his court, and because he was upholding the Constitution in his court, he ruled against some political crony of a congressman, that congressman could come into his office and say, well, I understand that you abused your judicial privilege and discretion and actually, sent my friend to jail. Well, I was only, taking notice of the Constitution at Article 4, blah, 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 blah. And the congressman says, I gave you discretion for a reason. And if you want to have your job, you'd better start using that discretion in an appropriate fashion. We've had some real Huey Lewis kind of stuff going on here for a long time, especially in the district courts. Now think about that, a district court. What is a district court doing operating in a state of the union? That they're talking about a District of Columbia court operating in a state of the union. What are these bastards doing? What do they think they're doing? What do we think they're doing? They have no right to be here talking to the people of the states of the union, summoning them in, waving their gavels around as if they had some sort of business to do with us. Those district courts are here operating illegally, unlawfully, against the Constitution. Hell, they're not even operating as real courts. They have to go. Okay? So these are just evil, illegal, horrible institutions which have been operating under color of law for a long, long time. And the state courts aren't a bit better because they're just franchises of these district courts. What do you see all over America? Oh, we got the first judicial district. We got the second judicial district. We got the third judicial district. You just count them up. You got 11 judicial districts last time I counted. Districts of what? What is the word district even appearing in our states? What business does it have in our states? What is the District of Columbia doing in our states? Addressing our people. And yet when you complain about this, when you say, hell no, go back to the District of Columbia, you know what they say? They say, well, if we do, who's going to preserve the public peace? Where are your courts? Where are your peacekeepers? So we have to boot up our courts. We have to operate our American common law. We have to have our peacekeepers. And then we can tell them to get the hell out of our states. Then we can restrict them to just addressing their own people, their own employees, their own dependents. And there's already law in place. Ex parte Milligan was decided in 1866 when this first came up, and it still stands. And basically what it says is when you get your court standing up and identify your population, have your peacekeeping forces in place, then we will stand down and not address anybody that's in your group.
That's very good information.
That being said, if you were going to be filing in a federal court, you would be filing in District of Columbia. And you also mentioned about a court within a court, which would, and I don't know, maybe it was like 6 months ago, there was a court within a court that's in the District of Columbia. I can't remember what the particulars were about that, but and would you be able to file in the District of Columbia and have it transferred here? I'm in San Diego and have it transferred here locally and have something heard as if it were a DC court?
No, what happens is that it gets transferred out of the district specifically because it's not a district matter. And then it can be referred back to a state court if you have a state court. That's why you have to join your assembly. That's why you have to be a juror. That's why you have to take elections. That's why you have to find somebody to serve as justice. That's why you have to put up your own courts, so that there is a court to serve the needs of the public. Otherwise, the territorial government comes in and says, well, they have to have a court system. If they don't have a court system, they have no way to resolve disputes and stop crime. So, obviously we have to stand in and do that for them. So that's what's been going on. This is what I get shoved down my throat all the freaking time. It's like, oh, you Americans, you want to complain and take Her Majesty's government to task over all these different things, and you want to complain and hold the Pope responsible for all these other different things that have happened that have been basically illegal, blah blah. Why don't you have your own courts? Why don't you have your own peacekeeping forces? Why aren't you doing your own thing and taking responsibility for yourself? You say you're self-governing. Well, why in the hell aren't you self-governing? If you don't govern yourself, somebody else has to govern for you. Otherwise, we just have crime rampant in every corner and there'd be complete lawlessness. So what are we going to do? And that's what they dish up right in our faces all the time. It's only been since the state assemblies got organized and our people were identified, and we have started this entire process. And in some few states and places, we actually have courts and juries standing. And we do have courts of record standing in all 50 states now, so we can do court of record cases. All right. And we do have the Federal Postal Court operating again. Bit by bit and piece by piece, we're putting it together, but it's not together yet. So I can only, give everybody a big huzzah and push forward to get it together. We do have lots of materials that have been identified that we can use to as reference material in running our courts. We've got the James Hall American Common Law and Procedure. We've got a whole list of common law resources that are listed on TASA. So we have the means, we have the material, we have the people. Now all we have to do is get our tail in a knot and actually lift up our courts.
That was my last question, is resources for anybody that wanted to pursue common law.
Well, we've got a listing of books that we recommend for different purposes for people that are trying to stand up their common law courts. That is listed on TASA. And then we actually have, there are resources where you can order these books. That's about as good as we can get in terms of being able to stand up our courts. But now, there is the other option. You can, and we do have, courts of record standing on all 50 states. And what a court of record is you just basically have the records in place that demonstrates the facts and that renders a conclusion. So you can use actual public records to render a judgment in a court of record. You can declare a court of record. You can bring forward the records that are on the public record, and you can declare a conclusion based on them. So you can do that already in all 50 states. Now that's international jurisdiction, that's land jurisdiction. It is not, regular common law that you would have available to you in a true common law court where you were having a jury trial. You can't address all issues and facts and come up with a judgment using a court of record. But there are times when having a court of record is damned handy. So consider researching the court of record and see if the issues that you're facing are court of record issues that you can prove using public records.
Well, I guess we find ourselves in the state we are in as going back to around the Civil War when we got, we were operating, were we not, in this country at the beginning up until the Civil War with our proper courts? And then we've had fraud committed against us.
Right. Fraud and duress under color of law.
Okay, well,
Does
thank
that
you.
answer your questions, Gregor?
Yes, and I yield.
Okay, excellent. And our final question, Anna, you made it. William.
Yeah, I was being very, very patient.
Yes,
I know
you
a lot
were.
of questions. How are you doing today, Anna?
Well, I'm tired as usual, but I'm here.
Okay, my lady, I'm not going to keep you out. First, I want to say I love everything you do and you have done. I want to note that. The question that I had was in reference to our courts. And you kind of, at the end, before I could ask this question, you kind of answered a lot of it. But can you backtrack a little bit, because I'm in Hernando County and I'm eager, and I want to really get into helping get our courts up and running, and we're trying to work on mock trials and things of that nature, trying to understand the fundamental basics of how to get things started. So where can you just tell me, where can I start? At least understanding of where I can get the education for myself, and as well as bringing it back to my assembly, so we can understand what we need to do to help get our courts up and running for reference to these mock trials and things of that nature.
Okay. Well, here's just, the sheer basics of common law. Common law depends upon consideration of similar cases that have already been decided in the past. So say that you have a property rights dispute. You look back in the annals of the decisions that have been made by courts in the past that dealt with the same or similar kinds of disputes. And you make an effort to determine whether or not this particular issue has ever come up before. Usually it has. And then you take reference to the way that the court decided that particular issue, and you use that to inform your current decisions, right?
Okay.
Okay, so that's the essence of common law. It's a law of case law. It's a law of decisions that have been made in the past. Now, of course, it's possible you'll come up with something that has never been considered, especially since we have things like new technologies and things of that sort that give rise to issues they didn't have in 1900 or, back in the day. And so you don't have a reference in some cases. But then you create a new precedent when you make decisions about subjects that have never been considered before. And every time that you consider a case, there's the possibility that you're going to create new case precedent because you're looking at some different aspect or you are looking at a totally new issue. So common law is a law of accretion. Slowly, you kind of build up this mass of decisions and reasoning about a particular issue. And when you consider that and collapse it down and look at what's happening right now in front of your face, then you have all of the rationale, you have the reasoning, you have the history, you have the decisions, you have the dissenting opinions. And you, right now here, you guys, you have all of the power in the world to either uphold or strike down everything that went before in your particular case. You are really standing as the God over the law when you're standing as a jury under our common law. Under American common law, the jury is king. And the jury gets to do what the jury wants to do. We have what is called jury nullification. And the jury gets to decide and address both the facts of the case and the law. And what that means is that not only do you look at what happened in this particular instance, all the little details of, so-and-so and so-and-so have a dispute about a strip of land located adjacent to both of their properties and blah, 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 blah. Okay, you got the facts, but you also got the law that you have to consider. You have to look at the law that is being brought forward as to settle this contest. And you get to look at the law and say, that law is unfair. It doesn't take into account this, and this. So it's skewed, it's unjust. We don't agree with it. The jury nullifies it as if it never existed. They send it back to the Congress. They send it back to the state legislature. They send it back to the administrative court. Wherever it came from, they say, no, that's not going to pass. And they just kick it right out of the court. The court and the case, everything, the whole thing, had just gone. And it has to be rewritten, rethought, re-legislated. Everything that was attached to that law goes out the door. So we get to, when we serve as jurors, have a incredibly powerful position because we get to not only judge the individual case and all the facts associated with that case, but we get to judge the law itself. Another common thing that happens when the juries in our courts are properly functioning is that we look at whether a law is properly constructed and whether it makes sense, or is it void for vagueness? And in my experience, a lot of laws that are churned out by Congress are very void for vagueness. They do not identify the population that they apply to. They don't disclose the purposes of the legislation. They don't describe what the infraction consists of. They write these really wishy-washy, nebulous laws so that they can interpret them however they like. And they're doing that on purpose because it gives them more coercive power, more latitude, more quote-unquote judicial discretion, right? But our juries are the ones that are supposed to be on the other side of that snake pit, looking at it and going, hell no, that doesn't identify who's the responsible party. Uh-oh, no, that doesn't identify the actual nature of the infraction or the basis of authority for it. Out the door, you know? And so, you know, our courts and our juries are supposed to be tossing these things back into the laps of all these different legislative bodies that are just churning out garbage. And let me tell you, part of the problem that we face in this country is that we have an accumulation of rotten laws and codes and regulations and statutes that are being misapplied to living people. And if our courts were engaged, if our courts were fully up to speed and were doing their part and they were nullifying this garbage on a righteous and regular basis, then we wouldn't have all these courts and we wouldn't have all these laws. There are 80 million different statutes and codes right now in this country. Can you imagine? 80 million.
A lot.
There's no way that we could ever remember and understand and obey all of that crap. No human being has been able to even manage 10 commandments.
I was just about to say that.
Right, we can't manage 10 commandments. How are we supposed to manage 80 million? And more to the point, how are we supposed to administer and interpret and enforce and pay for the enforcement of 80 million different codes and statutes?
Correct.
Okay? So it's stupid. It's impossible. It's something that we shouldn't be doing. It's insane that we're even trying. Okay? But our system was designed so that the jury nullification process would get rid of the poorly written and unfair statutes. But we haven't even been doing that for 160 years. And that's how we wound up with 80 million statutes and codes and regulations that have just gotten on the books, and there's nobody to take them off the books. That's another reason why you have to get your courts up and standing. We're drowning in statutes, codes, and regulations that don't apply to us, that are being misapplied to us. But on top of that, a great portion of these are either unauthorized or void for vagueness or unfair, just patently unfair. So our courts, with their jury nullification powers, are the intended instrument to prune the law and make sure that the law that does apply to us is good and clean and obvious and something that people can know and obey. Okay? So the other thing about our courts is, as I said before, our courts have an injured party. There's no such thing as theoretical harm. There's no such thing as a victimless crime in common law. There's always an injured party, somebody who has been directly injured themselves, as in, you know, I was manhandled and my arm was broken and I spent 6 weeks in the hospital recovering from internal injuries because, boom, this guy over here got drunk and drove his golf cart over me. Whatever it was, there's always an injured party who's either directly physically injured themselves or who has an example of, yeah, and then he drove his golf cart into my car and you know, created $15,000 worth of body work damage. Okay. So we always have an injured party. There is never a court case in which we don't have an injured party. And that means that the injured party has to stand up and make their claim for themselves. They have to bring forward their medical records, the witnesses, the time and the date, the model of their car. Here's the cost from the body shop for my car repairs. Blah 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 blah. Okay, and here I am. I'm this poor victim of this drunk in the golf cart. All right, I'm the injured party, and I have both bodily injury and I have injury to my property. Right. So this is who we have in our courts. We have injured parties, and they are either injured or their property is injured. And we have defendants. We have the people who caused the injury, allegedly. Okay? So our courts are very simple. We don't have a lot of Perry Mason stuff. We may have expert witnesses that come in. We might call on an accountant, for example, to explain the fine points of an audit that they performed to prove that somebody embezzled money from me. So yeah, we do have expert witnesses and that sort of thing. But for the main part, it's just you and I going toe to toe about some injury that was done to me or my property. Right? So our courts are very simple compared to their courts. And that's a blessing.
Did that answer your question, William?
Oh, yes, she did a great job at that as always, and I appreciate it. And I want to thank you very much, Anna. So I yield. So I know exactly which journey and road that I need to travel next. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Anna, we did get a late hand up. There was a chat going on. Barry has a very specific question. Can you just quickly give him a short answer?
Sure.
Okay, Barry, you got it.
Not going to get in the particulars. I'm in bankruptcy court. The court is trying to force me to do 1040 forms. I'm filing a Form 50 IRS Form 56 form to have the IRS as trustee. You have any suggestions? I'm not going to get in the particulars of the case. I don't want to waste the time.
Well, considering that the IRS is basically an illegal operation and has been declared so, and is actually engaged in active privateering without a privateer's license from anybody anymore, I think that the actual thrust of the argument should be going back on the IRS and its authority. And I would take it as a jurisdictional case right there and then, because, they really have no authority to be operating in the states of the Union at all. And they have no business addressing people that are not English, not British, and not operating as employees of the Roman Catholic Church. So, for me, the thing has gotten to the point, the meat of the issue is that they're operating illegally and unlawfully both, and they should be putting their tails between their legs and scuttering offshore and back to the District of Columbia as fast as their little legs can carry them, because there's absolutely no authority associated with them available against an American. Now, what you're telling me is that you sought bankruptcy protection, but you're not an incorporated entity. So how in the hell are you eligible for bankruptcy protection? The quick answer is that you're not, unless you make use of their franchise, which they have conferred on you, to gain bankruptcy protection from the public, meaning that I have to pay your debts. Okay? People think, oh, I'll declare bankruptcy and it'll all get written off. It doesn't get written off, honey. It gets cast off onto your neighbors and your friends as part of the public debt. And you're claiming to be a public corporation or a franchise of a public corporation, which is why there's a bankruptcy provision involved. Okay, but there's actually no bankruptcy court that's ever been authorized for operation within the states of the Union. You know that? We're not supposed to have bankruptcy courts, and we're not supposed to have public bankruptcy. This is all a big scam. It's all more of what they have done to us. Okay. Now, I understand that you can get in a position where you feel like, oh, there's no way out. Okay. I have to go bankrupt. I have to make use of their franchise. I have to seek protection, right? Well, you also then have to abide by whatever they demand of you because you're acting as their franchise corporation. So if they say that you have to pay federal taxes and you have to write out 1040s, well, then you do. Because you see, you're choosing, by seeking bankruptcy, you're choosing to operate in their system under their law as their franchise because you yourself are not an incorporated entity and can't qualify for bankruptcy under any kind of public arrangement where the public is going to be responsible for paying your debts. This is why I keep saying, you hear this thing, the United States is bankrupt, or the United States of America is bankrupt. And I say, bullshit. That's a big laugh because you have to be an incorporated entity to go bankrupt. I'm sorry. In this country, there's no debtor's prison. In this country, there's indemnification. And in this country, we don't do that. So you have to be a foreigner by definition, and you have to be a foreign corporation on top of it. And the public that's responsible for your debt is supposed to be a foreign public, like the British citizenry or the Papist citizenry that are here living cheek and jowl with the rest of us as undeclared foreign agents. Okay? But anyway, you stepped into their snake pit by claiming bankruptcy, and now you're stuck having to go through the whole tour de force and declare any taxes that are owed as a municipal corporation operating under your name or as a territorial corporation operating under your name. And you have to claim any income that those corporations had. And they are going to continue to use your signature, subjecting you to the laws of perjury if you make any mistakes. And they're also going to do that with the bankruptcy filing because they also have perjury requirements. And let me tell you, perjury is not the small-time thing that we think it is. They can really nail you for perjury, and they will. So whatever you do with filling out the IRS forms and all that, if anything, you want to be very generous about all of the money that you supposedly made. Anything that went through your bank account, go ahead and claim it up the wazoo. If there's anything that you've been hiding, you just spew it out there on the page. Just don't even try to hide any money or anything. Just right out there. Don't try to reduce your tax liability by making a bunch of deductions. Just, claim your entire earnings, everything, every penny that you received, anything that went through any bank account at all. Just claim it all as taxable income and do the calculations and put the full amount on the bottom line, because guess what? It's not going to be counted against you. It's going to be counted against a corporation that is being operated under your name. And you're going to walk out of that bankruptcy court and the IRS isn't going to be coming after you anymore because there have already been a number of suits about this. And so it's already been decided that, yeah, that's a corporation. You can't come back after the authorized representative.
Yeah, I put the indemnity bond in there and they refused it.
Yeah, well, you're not indemnifying because you're not acting as a living man. You're acting as a foreign corporation when you're in bankruptcy court.
Good knowledge. Thank you, please. Thanks, Anna.
I'm trying.
Thank you, Barry. Okay, I know I pushed you over at 7:23. It looks like Greg has his hand up again. Do you want to entertain or are you tired?
I am tired, but I will give Greg one more run at
Okay,
it.
let's keep it short, Greg. What would you like?
Yeah, it's just short. I was just to follow on what she said about our common law courts and where's the injured party. So I heard you talking about physical injury. A lot of people claim emotional injury and, oh, I'm afraid, or, oh, my I actually have a court case right now where the neighbor's trying to allege this. There's been nothing physical. There's never been any knives or guns waved or anything. He's just up and down emotional. But there's as far as our courts, they can do that in their courts, I think. But in our courts, I don't think what is that in our courts? If common law courts about, oh, I'm afraid.
Now look, everything always has its own specificity. I can give you an example. Say that someone has been stalking a young woman, and every time that she comes home from work, this guy is pacing right behind her, half a block behind her, and he follows her all the way to where her sidewalk branches off the main sidewalk, you know. And so she finds herself, if she runs, he runs. If she slows down, he slows down. But he's always right there and he's always right behind her. Now, this kind of behavior in itself is not creating a harm in the sense of injuring, but it is creating a harm, right? She feels threatened, and she has every right to feel threatened and creeped out. This is interfering with her quality of life. Now, if she then has to hire someone to provide her with security, she has to hire a neighbor to stand watch and be there to kind of be a protector in the wings, then the cost of hiring that neighbor is a direct injury as a result of this behavior on the third party, right? If she has to invest in a sidearm and sidearm training because she's afraid for her health and safety as a result of this stalking, well, that's another harm, isn't it? It's another expense, something else that has to enter her life because of someone's bad behavior. So there are cases where, you know, there can be actual factual harms that are being demonstrated by things that are otherwise psychological and to some extent are within our own power to resolve. Now, if someone were doing that to me, I would resolve it. But there are women out there who are not that determined. Okay? So you have to make allowances for each situation, and so must the jury. And the jury will sort through things and determine whether you're just being are you being a noisome Nelly and being a drama queen and pretending that you're more scared and have more cause to be scared than you actually have. I mean, did Gregory ever threaten you verbally? Did Gregory stalk you? Did Gregory show a weapon? Did he brandish a gun? What exactly did Gregory do that ever threatened you? Factually. And it better be something that's demonstrable and proven, something that can be proven. Like, oh, well, I have my 10 neighbors here who have watched him stalk me every day when I get off the bus from work. So I'm not saying that harm has to be physical. It doesn't have to result in scratches and bruises and broken arms, okay? Harm can be less material, but harm is harm. And we all have a good sense of what real harm is versus pretend harm or hysterical harm claims.
Okay. Thank you.
Answer your question? Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Our new militia commander had his hand up briefly, took it down, put it up again. I don't know. Would you like to ask a question very quickly?
Hello.
Yep, you got a broken signal,
Can you
but
hear me?
try to give it out. Yep, go ahead.
The signal's trying to kind of copy. So say like I know where you were like those who have a passport or those who have a government officiated ID, which we're trying to stop you. Later on we get a GFG open. When you go to the hospital and everything, and they give you over the counter, prescription medicine, now or whatever, or Walgreens, our credentials don't clear for
You're breaking up too badly. Could you write it out?
You're muted, Kim.
Thank you, Janice. I'm sorry. Yeah, I muted him. His signal is terrible. I think he was basically just trying to ask when the credentials cards across the board would be recognized. I heard him say something about like if you go to the hospital or to get prescription medication, he doesn't believe it's being recognized right now.
Well, it is. It's being recognized by the United Nations,
correct.
And it should be recognized. In terms of identification of you. It may not give you rights to Medicaid, for example, or it may not give you rights to, getting some sort of drug. But, more and more and more people are getting the word, and it is being accepted because it has to be accepted. It's internationally correct, and it is our real government that's issuing this. So if you're having problems with Walgreens, go to a different drugstore. Write a letter of complaint. Tell them that, hey, this is the new ID for Americans. If you don't want to do business with Americans, what in the hell are you doing in this country?
Okay. All right. Well, we reached the end. I know that there is nothing but love in this room and appreciation and gratitude for everything that you're doing. And I am going to encourage Dorothea to send an email unless you want to take this, Anna.
Well, it's an international question, and I think it's best if we just shut down for tonight because my voice is giving out, girls.
Okay.
You can hear it.
And then the only other thing I just want to tag into your brain is that throughout the thread in the chat, people had checked their GFGs happily, and they do recognize that there have been some updates, but it would appear that the GFG missed the month of August. And if you would just kindly pass that along, that's that.
Will do. Yep.
Big hugs from California. Warm, sunny, windy hugs from California. Thank you for everything tonight. Always fun to see you.
Well, thank you, Kim.
Yeah, my pleasure. Good night, everyone. God bless you all. And until next time, you just keep smiling, keep doing everything you're doing because it is working.
Yes,
have a good night, Anna.
Good night, guys.
Thank you, Anna. Good night.
Anna. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Sending our love to you, Anna. Thank you.
Good night.
Okay. Everyone, great questions. Thank you so much for all the participation. I apologize if anybody feels like I was sort of talking on top or interrupting too much. I really was trying to push through to get concise answers, especially about the GFG. I know it's a big topic for a lot of people. And as Anna says, sometimes she can sort of go on a little bit of tangent. So God bless you all. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing everybody again. Thanks for.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Good night, everybody. Great meeting.
My pleasure. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.
Thank you. Good night.
Night, everybody.
Night, night.